name is Tracy, and today I will be doing a bracelet tutorial for the Potomac Bead Company. This is my Candy Blossoms bracelet design. It was one of my entries in the 2017 Potomac Bead Company Design Challenge. The highlight of this bracelet are the 2-hole candy beads that run along the center of the bracelet, and they are surrounded by DiscDuos, which gives it a flower look. Also in this bracelet we have 11 seed beads, 8 toe-hole demi rounds, 3x4mm Potomac crystal rondelles, and for a closure we have a cup button with a beaded loop. I have a few different color ways that I created for this bracelet. Here is one of them. In this particular bracelet, I use the Aztec Gold DiscDuos with a blue colored candy bead. One of the differences in this particular bracelet is that I used 4mm rounds instead of the rondelles along the sides. Now I've also used this design and extended the length to create a choker. Now for this one, it's black and silver. It has a cup button closure, but you can also use a different type of closure or clasp if you need to make the choker adjustable. Okay, so for our bracelet that we are making today, we are going to need the 2-hole candy beads, and I will be using the Creamy Airy Pearl, or the Cream Airy Pearl. We're going to need DiscDuos, and I will be using the Aztec Gold color. We will need 3x4mm rondelles, and I'm using the Potomac crystal rondelles in the Persian turquoise Picasso color. We're going to need 11 seed beads, and I will be using the Miyuki Duracoat galvanized dark seafoam. We're going to need some 8 toe-hole demi rounds, and I will be using the gold line crystal color. You'll need a closure for your bracelet. I am going to be using a cup button, and the color I have is the Jade Picasso. Now for this project, it is a 2-needle project. So we're going to need 2 needles, and I will be using 2 size 12 beading needles. And for my beading thread, I will be using the Wildfire .006 in the green color. I have my thread zap ready, and this is what I will be using to cut and burn down my thread. Okay, so let's get all our supplies ready, and we'll get started on this project. To start off our project, we want to thread our needles, and you'll want to work with a comfortable length of beading thread. I have 2.5 yards of beading thread, and I've placed a needle on each end of the thread. So with one needle, we'll pick up 3 11 seed beads, and then we'll place both needles through our cup button. So we'll place one needle through one hole and the other needle through the other hole of our cup button. And then what we'll do is we'll center the cup button and those seed beads on our thread. With each needle, we're going to pick up 3 11 seed beads, and we'll let those drop down. Now we'll pick up a DiscDuo, and we're going to do that with both needles. We'll place one needle through one hole and the other needle through the other hole. And we'll let that drop down. We'll pick up a toe hole demi round on each needle, followed by an 11-0 on each needle. And let that drop down. With both needles, we'll pick up a candy bead. So one needle will go through one hole, and the other needle will go through the other hole. And I'm picking up the candy bead so that the rounded part is on the top. Now I'm going to place my left needle to the side, and I'm going to work right now with just the right needle. So let's pick up one 11-0 seed bead and two DiscDuos. And we're going to sew back through the 11-0 that's right before our candy bead. So we'll sew through the 11-0, we'll sew through our candy bead, and then we're going to sew through the 11-0 that follows our candy bead. So, and this is what you'll have. Your DiscDuos will lay right to the side of your candy bead. Now I'm going to place this right needle to the side, and I'm going to pick up our left needle, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to pick up one 11-0 seed bead. We'll pick up two DiscDuos, and then we'll go through the 11-0 that's right before our candy bead. We'll sew through the candy bead, and then we'll sew through the 11-0 that's right after our candy bead. And pull tight. With both needles, we'll pick up one toe hole demi round. So one demi round on one needle and one on the other. We'll sew through a DiscDuo, one needle through one hole and the other needle through the other hole. Pick up one toe hole demi round on each needle, and we'll let that drop down. We're going to pick up an 11-0 on each needle, and then we're going to pick up a candy bead by sewing one needle through one hole and the other needle through the other hole. And we want to pick up our candy beads so that, I'm going to have to redo mine. We want to pick up our candy beads so that they're all laying upright, or the top, the rounded part is on the top. Okay? So I'm going to lay it out so that I pick it up right this time. So one needle through one hole, and the other needle through the other hole. So I'm going to put my left needle to the side for a moment. We'll pick up our right needle, pick up an 11/0 seed bead and 2 DiscDuos. Let those drop down. We're going to sew back through the 11/0 that's right before our candy bead. We'll go through our candy bead, and then we'll sew through that 11/0 we just added after our candy bead. And pull tight. I'm going to place that right needle to the side. With my left needle, I'm going to do the same thing. Pick up an 11/0 seed bead, pick up 2 DiscDuos, let those drop down. We are going to sew through the 11/0 that's right before the candy bead. We'll sew through the candy bead and then through the 11/0 we just added after the candy bead. We want to pick up a toe hole demi round on each needle. We're going to follow that by picking up a DiscDuo. We're going to place one needle through one hole and the other needle through the other hole, and let that drop down. We're going to pick up a toe hole demi round on each needle, followed by an 11/0 seed bead on each needle. Now we're going to pick up a candy bead. So we're kind of following the same process over and over to pick up the candy beads and the DiscDuo. So one needle goes through one hole of the candy bead and the other needle goes through the other hole. Okay, we want to put one needle to the side for a moment, pick up an 11/0 seed bead. We're going to pick up 2 DiscDuos and we'll sew back through the 11/0 that's right before our candy bead, sew through the candy bead, and we'll sew through that 11/0 we just added that will fall right after our candy bead. And pull tight. With the other needle, we're going to do the same thing. Pick up an 11/0. We'll pick up 2 DiscDuos. Let those drop down. We'll sew back through the 11/0 that's before our candy bead. We'll sew through the candy bead and the 11/0 we just added that will fall right after our candy bead. And we'll pull tight. And here we want to pick up our toe hole demi rounds on each needle. We'll pick up a DiscDuo and another toe hole demi round on each needle, followed by an 11/0. Okay, so you just want to continue to repeat the steps of adding your DiscDuo, your toe holes, your 11/0s, and your candy beads, along with the candy beads the DiscDuos on the side. So we're going to continue to repeat these steps for the length of our bracelet. Now in my bracelet that I have right here, I have a total of 10 candy beads, and I start the bracelet and end it with a DiscDuo right before the clasp. Now the length of this bracelet is approximately 7 inches. So with 10 candy beads, you'll get a bracelet that's approximately 7 inches. If you need something longer, you'll need to add an additional, I'll call it a blossom or a section of candy beads with the DiscDuos. So continue adding your candy beads and your DiscDuos and your seed beads and your Toho demi rounds for the length of the bracelet that you need. So as we are finishing adding the beads for the base of our bracelet, we want to end with a DiscDuo bead on this end, similar to how we started off the base of the bracelet with a DiscDuo bead. So right now our threads on both sides is coming out of the 11-0 seed bead that's right after our candy bead. We want to pick up one Toho demi round on each needle, and then we want to pick up our DiscDuo. One needle goes through one hole and the other needle goes through the other hole. And we'll let that drop down and we'll pull tight. I'll place one needle to the side. And now we want to add our beaded loop. To do that, we'll pick up two 11-0 seed beads, followed by two Toho demi rounds. Now we want to repeat that sequence 7 more times. So we'll pick up two 11-0 followed by two Toho demi rounds. Okay. We then want to add 2 more 11-0 seed beads. So on our thread, we'll have a total of 18 11-0 seed beads and 16 Toho demi rounds. We'll sew through the opposite hole of our DiscDuo, and we're only going through the DiscDuo bead. And we'll pull tight, and we'll set this needle to the side, and with our other needle we're going to reinforce our loop. So we're starting on this side of the loop. We want to make sure we're going up through all the beads that we added for the loop, and that we don't skip any or miss any. So as we finish going through all of our beads in the loop, we want to then go through the DiscDuo bead on this side of the loop. Or I'm sorry, yes, on this side. And we'll pull tight. So now with the needle that I'm currently holding, we will pick up 3 11/0 seed beads, and we're going to sew through this next DiscDuo that's sitting off to the side of our candy bead. So we're going to sew through the second hole of the next DiscDuo right here, and this will get us in position to begin adding the beads along the side of our bracelet. Here we want to pick up 3 more 11/0 seed beads and then sew through the second hole of the next DiscDuo. We want to pick up a 3x4mm rondell and sew through the second hole of the next DiscDuo on this side. We'll pick up 3 11/0 seed beads and sew through the second hole of the next DiscDuo. Pick up a 3x4mm rondell and sew through the second hole of the next DiscDuo. I'm going to place this needle to the side for a moment, and I'm going to pick up my other needle and begin adding the beads along the other side of the bracelet. So we'll pick up 3 11/0 seed beads, and we're going to sew through then the second hole of the next DiscDuo on the other side of the bracelet. Here we'll pick up 3 11/0 seed beads and sew through the second hole of the next DiscDuo. Pick up a 3x4mm rondell and sew through the second hole of the next DiscDuo. Pick up 3 11/0 seed beads and sew through the second hole of the next DiscDuo. We'll pick up a 3x4mm rondell and we're going to sew through the next hole, or the second hole of the next DiscDuo. So on both sides of our bracelet, we want to continue adding 3 11/0 seed beads in between these two DiscDuos that are right next to each other, and then we'll add in our 3x4mm rondell in this small gap between the sets of DiscDuos. So continue to do that along both sides of our bracelet. So now that we've completed adding the rondelles and the 11/0 seed beads along the sides of our bracelet, right now I am coming out of the second hole of the last DiscDuo on both sides, and we want to get ready to reinforce our cut button. So we'll pick up 3, I'm working with 1 needle right now, pick up 3 11/0 seed beads, and we're going to come through the DiscDuo that's on the end of our bracelet. So go up through that DiscDuo. I'm going to go ahead and go up through the DiscDuo and around to reinforce. I'm sorry, up through the cup button and around to reinforce. With my other needle, I want to add on 3 11/0 seed beads and go up through the ending DiscDuo on this side. And I'm going to go sew through that DiscDuo and go up and around our cup button. Okay, as we are finishing reinforcing our cut button, right now I have the thread on both sides coming out of the last of those 11/0 seed beads. With one needle, I'm going to sew through the DiscDuo. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other needle. I'm going to sew through the DiscDuo. Okay, now I want to begin to add my seed bead embellishment along the top down the center of the bracelet. I'm going to move my beads out of the way. So in order to do that, I'm going to use one needle, my right needle. I'm going to sew through the next toe hole demi round and pull tight. I'm going to pick up 6 11/0 seed beads. And I'm going to sew through the next toe hole demi round that's on this side of the beadwork. So it's going to be right before the next DiscDuo down the center. So we're going to sew, we're skipping over the 11/0, we're skipping over the candy bead, and we're skipping over the 11/0 after the candy bead, and we're going to sew right through this toe hole demi round. Only the toe hole demi round. We'll pick up 3 11/0 seed beads, and we're going to skip over this DiscDuo on this side, and we're going to sew through the next toe hole demi round. I'm going to put this needle to the side for a moment. I'm going to do the same thing on this side of the beadwork. We're going to pick up 6 11/0 seed beads. I'm going to take those beads off. I need to first sew through the toe hole demi round, the first toe hole demi round that's after my DiscDuo on this side. And now I want to pick up 6 11/0 seed beads, and then we'll sew through the next toe hole demi round. We'll skip over the 11/0, the candy bead and the 11/0, and we're going to sew through this next toe hole demi round. I'm going to pick up 3 11/0 seed beads. And now we want to sew through, we'll skip over the DiscDuo and sew through the next toe hole demi round bead. Okay, we'll pick up 6 11/0 seed beads. And we'll skip over the 11/0, the candy bead and the 11/0, and we'll sew through the next toe hole demi round. I'm going to pick up 3 11/0 seed beads, skip over the DiscDuo, and sew through the next toe hole demi round. Put this needle to the side, and we'll go to pick up the other needle to sew our seed beads along this side down the center. So here we want to pick up 6 11/0 seed beads. We'll skip over our 11/0, our candy bead and our 11/0, and we'll sew through the next toe hole demi round. We'll pick up 3 11/0 seed beads, skip over this DiscDuo, and sew through the next demi round. And we'll pull tight. So we want to continue adding this seed bead embellishment down the center, both sides of the center of the bracelet. So we'll add 6 11/0 seed beads that will kind of cross over the candy bead and the 11/0s, and then we'll add 3 11/0 seed beads that will cross over our DiscDuo. And we'll only be going through the demi rounds, so we'll only be sewing through the demi rounds as we go down the center. So as we complete adding our seed beads down the center of the bracelet, and we exit from the last demi round, what we want to do is we want to begin to add additional seed beads along the side of our bracelet. In order to do that, we'll sew through the 3 11/0 seed beads that are after and off to the side of our last toe hole demi round. And this will get us back over to the side of our bracelet. We'll sew through our DiscDuo, the second hole of our DiscDuo. I'm going to turn my bracelet, it'll be a little easier for me to do this. So we'll sew through the second hole of our DiscDuo, and we're going to sew through the first 11/0 seed bead along the side, or in between those two DiscDuos. So we'll just sew through 1 11/0 seed bead. Here we'll pick up 3 11/0s, and then we're going to skip over this middle 11/0, and we'll sew back down through the last 11/0 and then through our DiscDuo. And that's going to form a little picot. sew through our 3 by 4 millimeter rondell, and then sew through the next DiscDuo. Here we'll want to sew through the first 11-0. We'll pick up 3 11-0 seed beads, skip over the middle 11-0, and then sew back down through that third 11-0, and then down through our DiscDuo. Sew through the 3 by 4 millimeter rondell. And one more time on this side, we'll sew through our DiscDuo and up through that first 11-0 seed bead out of the 3. We're going to pick up 3 11-0s, skip over the middle 11-0, and then sew back down through the third 11-0, and then back down through the next DiscDuo. Okay, I'm going to set this needle to the side. I'll pick up the needle on the other side of the bracelet. Now I've already started by adding the first picot on this side. Right now I'm exiting from the first 11-0 seed beads on this set. Here I'm going to pick up 3 11-0s and then sew back, skip over the middle 11-0 and sew back down through the third 11-0. So we're repeating the same steps to add the little picot edging along the side of the bracelet. We'll sew through this 3 by 4 millimeter rondell and then through the second hole of the next DiscDuo. I'm going to go up through that first 11-0 and pick up 3 11-0s, skip over the middle 11-0, and then sew back down through the last or the third 11-0, and then also back down through the second hole of this next DiscDuo. So we'll continue those steps to add this little picot edging along both sides of the bracelet. So as we finish adding the additional edging along the sides of our bracelet, we're pretty much complete with our bracelet. What we want to do is end our thread and burn it down. So right now on both sides of the bracelet I have the thread exiting from the last DiscDuo we exited. I want to go through those 3 11-0 seed beads, and if you would like, you could begin ending your thread right here. I would suggest turning over to the back of the beadwork to end your thread. Since I have some additional thread left, I'm actually going to use it to just go down through the center of the beadwork to reinforce. I like to reinforce when I can. So, and I'm probably going to do it from the back of the beadwork. So I'm coming through these 3 11-0 seed bead that I just passed through, and I'll come down through this toe hole demi round, and I'll go through the 11-0 seed bead, the candy bead, and the 11-0. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. I'll come up through the 311 LC beads. And like I said, if you like, you can end your thread there. I'm going to turn mine over to the back, and I'm just going to kind of use up some more of the thread that I have left, just to reinforce a little bit of my beadwork. But that's pretty much the completion of the bracelet. Once you end or tie off and end your thread, this will complete your bracelet. So this is what the bracelet will look like once you put it on. Really nice. I really like this color combination. I think it came out really, really nice. And the back of the bracelet looks like this. This is the side that that has the flat side of the candy beads. Well, I hope you enjoyed this bracelet tutorial. Once again, this is the Candy Blossoms bracelet, and thank you so much for watching.